given all of the change that we've seen happening in the industry over the last 5 years or so. My name is Fariba Zamaniyan. I'm Vice President of Data and Monetization Sales at TiVo. David Finkelstein is CEO and co-founder at BDEX. And we're going to take you through the process. We don't have a lot of time for questions, so please feel free to drop a question in the chat. And if we don't get to it, we'll certainly be able to respond to your questions. Feel free to drop us an email. We'll share our email addresses with you at the end of our presentation. So that said, as you've just kind of gone through a preview, there's certainly been an incredible transformation that's happened in television over the years. And really, as we look over the past couple of years, more importantly, even from Q4 to Q1, we've seen an incredible expansion of consumer interest in expanding their access to video content. TiVo conducts a biannual survey to find out what are the key trends in viewing habits. Our latest update was just done in Q2 of this year. And in that latest update, we discovered that there was a 27% increase in the number of different subscription services that they're acquiring above even just Q4, which is a rate that's double what we've seen in the last 5 years. And what's been interesting to see in that growing number is not just the expansion in the number of SVOD or subscription-based video on-demand services, but also their adoption of free and ad-supported video services. So the increased demand is certainly growing not just in the number of services, but in the ways that they're acquiring access to those services. The traditional linear or pay TV predominantly being accessed through a main TV screen, as we've seen with some of the expansion subscription services like AVOD, SVOD, TVOD, virtual MVPDs. But even more important are access to those, especially when outside of the home, where mobile and tablet usage is growing, which is expanding the opportunities for marketers to reach specific audiences on their main screens, but also extensions of them on their personal devices. But it's also important to really level set that though there's this expansion of different ways to access video content, and it's something that we continue to ensure that we remind audiences, is that access to video content is still predominantly being accessed through pay TV services or linear TV. On average, as we found in our most recent update, and is really continuing to be the majority, is that the average consumer is viewing 4+ hours of video per day on their linear or pay TV devices. SVOD, AVOD is certainly being used, though not at the same rate as linear. So really at the heart of this access to premium content is coming through the main screen as well as through pay TV services. But what's interesting and what has surfaced and coming out of even the last discussion is that there is this interest in growing demand for ad-supported video services in order to gain access to content without paying more. And in our latest update, we found that consumers are reaching a tipping point in that they're frustrated with the ability to access easily and efficiently the video that they want to see in a single or more efficient way, and also at the cost that they're continuing to spend out of pocket are really becoming pain points. And in fact, found that 81% of the respondents are expressing a real interest and preference for free ad-supported streaming products. So I wholeheartedly agree. And one of our takeaways that we found from this latest update with what Courtney just said is that there is an imminent rebundling that's going to be occurring, at which in the center of that is going to continue to be those pay TV services and this growing interest for AVOD, especially when the churn on SVOD continues to outpace that of the traditional linear platforms. So how do we now take that power of the linear group and extend it to these growing audiences that are accessing their content beyond linear TV onto their AVOD related services is really when it gets down to personalizing the linear TV data and the audiences, and given their scale and importance to the advertising ecosystem, the ability to still be able to transmit our branded messages to these audiences without sacrificing unduplication and the incrementality that can be achieved. So the power of linear data is the ability now with the passive collection that's being done in a digital set basis. It's to infuse that linear data with other first and third party to create those finite target audiences that we're all seeking to drive our commercial messages against, that extend beyond the traditional pay TV, as well as the different mediums of acquiring that content, and then really be able to increase the precision of how we ultimately measure how much and at what rate that message is being delivered, and also the ability to measure that performance. So I'm going to turn it over to David, who's going to walk you through how we can do that.
Thank you, Fariba. Yeah, so one of the things that we're doing with TiVo is looking at all of the linear TV viewership data that they have across the nationwide, and bringing that into a platform, our platform, which aggregates data from 100 different sources to build a profile of consumers based on not just their TV viewership data, but all of the other data assets that we have to understand the consumer viewership sort of profile. And then doing that and aggregating that against an identity graph, which allows us to then reach those households, those consumers that are watching specific TV shows or genres, and be able to actually run machine learning against those consumers, and expand sort of that viewership audience across a full audience nationwide in a privacy compliant manner, and doing so with great accuracy up to 90% per segment. So this sort of gives you sort of the timeline of how that's done, looking at the viewership behavior data, matching it against the consumer profiles and the machine learning, and then scaling that and verifying it, so that we can essentially reach those same audiences across full multi-channel, across all digital capabilities. So as you can see here, then essentially what we do is we have these sort of pre-built audiences, like Fariba was saying, different audiences for different people that are viewing different shows, but we can also customize those and build custom audiences to reach very specific audiences.
And I think when we get into custom, one of the greatest applications of linear that can be transformed to personalization is the ability to sequentially target those that are exposed or not exposed to linear campaign to ensure that we're achieving incrementality across these emerging platforms, one of which is the most prevalent today or of most interest is connected TV. So by using the linear TV data, we are able to effectively identify on a passive basis whether or not they've been exposed or not exposed at a spot level to a national or local ad airing. So the ability to identify that, for example, a non-exposed audience, so that we can create a linear suppressed audience base that can then be retargeted in a CTV setting. So as this graph shows, in a process that goes from left to right, we identify and isolate the audience based on their exposure. And we can set minimum thresholds as to the number of seconds of the exact spot they were able to view in its entirety to qualify as exposed or not. We then, as David mentioned, leverage the platform of thousands of data assets to segment further the audience based on the behavioral profile of interest, and then scale that audience so that we have the ability to truly make an impact upon delivery, personalize by identifying the various touch points for those respective households based on the linear data so that we can reach them on their mobile device or on their glass screen within their homes. Leverage activation partners, DMPs, and ad networks that enable us to then deliver those impressions against the audience of interest. And through that same technology, enable us with accuracy to measure delivery and ultimately get into more advanced metrics that help us determine if incrementality in reach was actually achieved and ultimately if an impact on sales was the result. And that can be done sequentially or sequentially on a programmatic or a direct basis, programmatically through activation partners that have been established. And in premium, we're able to do so by leveraging inventory that we have access to at TiVo. So we did a case study to demonstrate and provide a proof point against the process we just described by looking at our own product launch last year with the Stream 4K, where we leveraged a television campaign airing against our CTV inventory that gave us access to incrementally reach 31 million plus homes that were 31 million active users across 20 million plus homes, 140 different content partners, viewability, skippable inventory, variety in spots, competitive separations, ad tags that can be applied, as well as advanced reporting. So leveraging that inventory, we actually did a research ourselves with the launch of the Stream 4K, where our objective was to drive incrementality of sales for our product launch. We targeted sports enthusiasts who weren't exposed to the linear campaign and wanted to be sure to reach that same group on connected TV without duplicating that experience. We created the audience by isolating households who were defined as sports enthusiasts based on their tune-in activity to sports. There was a minimum amount of time spent per day, per week in order to be qualified as a user, as a target, as part of the user profile. And that was a group then that we were looking to then place the inventory against on connected TV, and sought that same group by ensuring we isolated those that were not exposed to the linear campaign. Working with BDEX, we're able to basically scale that audience, going through a verification process to confirm that the group that was scaled represented the group that represents the seed segment. We executed the campaign on connected TV inventory where sports enthusiasts were tuned in. And as a result, we're able to execute a conversion and lift analysis that, looking within the same campaign window, we're able to tie IP addresses to their impression delivery in order to define those groups that were exposed and not exposed, and compare and calculate the relative lift or difference in terms of sales, online sales for TiVo Stream 4K. And in fact, during this window of time, found that there was a 25% lift in our sales among those who were exposed to the CTV campaign. So leveraging this overall methodology, we're able to harness the power of linear TV by defining passively a variety of viewing audiences, getting even more intricate in terms of whether or not they were exposed to specific campaigns, and then leverage that audience with BDEX in order to attach and append additional attributes that would further then define the audience of interest on a scaled level, execute the campaign, and ultimately measure and define the performance. So this is the new age of TV, not just in how we're able to access it, but also in the means of which we can harness the power of the data, leverage it in order to develop and execute precise planning strategies to optimize the performance of our investments. So we don't have any more time left, but again, we're happy to take your questions. Here's our email addresses, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the event, and thank you for your time.